This is For the Creators.
Welcome back to another episode of For the Creators, where it's our job to demystify creativity. In these long-form conversations, we tease out tips and tricks from all kinds of creators, whether they're musicians, presenters, actors, DJs, writers, entrepreneurs, and everything in between. In this interview, I sit down with Nene Parsotam, the co-founder of Vine Creatives, a visual communications and brand strategy agency. Nene has worked with some of the largest brands in the world, including the Wall Street Journal, Disney, L'Oreal, HP, Warner Brothers, Visa, Samsung, and Vodafone, just to name a few. From crafting digital and online advertising campaigns to designing and building websites, she's quite literally a creative force to be reckoned with. During our conversation, we discussed what it was like growing up in England in the 80s, embracing both sides of her culture, self-acceptance, and what it really takes to go where there is no path and create one. I walked away from this interview feeling motivated to do the things that I love to do, but she also impressed upon me the importance of not just seeking to take from others, but to also go out into the world with the intention of adding value to the lives of every person that I encounter. So, without further ado, please enjoy my sit down with Nene Parsotam. So what's your family background?
Nigerian, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Both sides?
Both sides, yeah. So I'm first generation Nigerian here, yeah. My parents got here in the 70s, just mid-70s or so, yeah, and I've been here ever since, yeah, you know.
Cool. So yeah, like I was saying just now, when I typed your name into Google, it automatically came up with Nene Weeks. Do you ever get mistaken for it in a professional world?
Nope.
Nope. And that is probably a good thing.
Absolutely, not even a little bit, you know. I mean, I follow her on Instagram, and she's a fashion stylist, isn't she? She does fashion?
She's from the Real Housewives of Atlanta.
That's right, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so her background, I think she just mainly started off on the show, and then now she's got her own clothing line.
That's right,
which is why you associate her with fashion.
Fashion, isn't it? Yeah, that's actually very nice.
I think she does acting as well.
Right.
So I guess she's just used the platform of the Real Housewives of Atlanta, and then
why not, eh? Yeah, why not?
Expanded.
But no one mistakes me for her. No.
Which brings me to your surname, because your surname isn't traditionally
Nigerian. No.
So is that surname by marriage?
Yes.
Okay.
My husband is Gujarati. It's a really interesting story, which I kind of won't go into now, because if I do, I'm not going to get it wrong. But it's when his parents came here from Kenya. They had another name after Parsotam, but I think they kind of like dropped it, so they ended up, so when they came and they had to write whatever, it turns out that they just used Parsotam. So Parsotam is actually a middle name, not a surname.
Oh,
but
wow.
I know, it's kind of stuck. Yeah, it sounds very American, because that's what happens when people go to America, migrate to America. But yeah, so I don't even know what it means, actually.
It's a really cool surname as well.
It's distinctive, right?
Definitely.
It's quite distinctive. But
so that's why it's hard to place you. So that's why I had to ask you the question, like, what's your family background?
That's right, yeah, that's right.
It doesn't jump out to me as a West Indian name or surname, nor does it jump out to me as an African surname. So it's only recently when I've been on Instagram that I realised that you have children. So then I put two and two to go, oh, she must be married.
That's right, yeah.
So the surname must come through by virtue of marriage.
That's right, yeah. It's Nene, though, is quite a popular name is in Nigeria. It's actually quite popular. It's kind of like...
What does Nene mean?
Great mother.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So would you say that you're a very nurturing sort of person?
Nope.
No. Okay, so on to the next question. No. I'm joking.
No. I think it's because when I had my kids, I kind of, as silly as it's going to sound, I kind of relied on the fact that no, people have been calling me great mother since I was born, because that's my name, you know. So I'm automatically going to be a great mother.
Instinctively.
Turns out that no, not. And it's like everything, you have to learn it. So
definitely.
yeah.
So talking about children, what were you like as a child? Would you say that you were a leader? Were you more quiet, reserved?
Oh my God.
How would you describe yourself as a child?
I was a terror as a child, I won't even lie.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was
What way?
Difficult, very expressive. I think very expressive, especially when I was in secondary school. I wanted very much to be noticed. you know. So I was brash and loud and whatnot, you know.
Well, you turned out well, because usually the people in secondary school who are really loud are the ones who end up not doing much.
So yeah,
you saved yourself.
It's true. No, thank God. Honestly, I've got to thank God for that one. But I'm the first child as well. You know, I have a brother and sister underneath me. So yeah, I was a bit bossy and whatnot. I've already apologised to my parents, because now that I have my own children, I'm like, look, I'm really sorry.
Payback.
Exactly, I'm really sorry. And it turns out both my kids are really high energy, really, really high energy. And I'm like, wow, I think, that's kind of payback. But no, I think I was a bit of a difficult child. Baby, I think I was all right, but child, I was like, yeah.
Just finding yourself, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think obviously every child has in them inherent traits that they use later on. Like, you know, I'm not brash anymore, but I am, you know, well spoken or a confident speaker or whatnot, you know. So if my parents had kind of honed those particular character traits when I was younger, then it would have been. But
also, they say that we pick up or we learn most of our habits by the time we're around between 7 and 10, right. I think it is. Right. So, you know, all those leadership or bossy could now be called leader.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's just looking at it from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
So now you must be a really good manager in your organisation. And
yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying
to give you compliments.
I know.
Yeah, so what would you say was your main creative outlet as a child? Were you a creative person growing up?
Always, I've always been creative. And my outlet, I had two main outlets. One of them was drawing. I used to draw, as in hand draw. And it's the biggest regret of my life, me not pursuing that. Yeah, not pursuing it.
Still time.
There is. That's what my husband says. He says there's still time. There's still time. You know, it's like, you should get into it and whatnot, because I wanted to be an animator. That was my I wanted to be an animator. Yeah. So drawing was a massive outlet for me, and then so was making things. I like to make things, you know, whether it was sewing or arts and crafts or whatnot. So I like to do things like that. But drawing, definitely. And now I see all of these people on like Patreon and Instagram and whatnot, and they have like huge amount of followers, and they're just pumping out all of their really cool, beautiful designs and everything else. I'm like, yeah, that could have been me.
Do you see any of that in your children, or do you encourage them to be as creative as they can be?
Yes, I do. But I think now I've learned that creativity is not just art and it's not just design. There's creativity in lots of things. There's creativity in finance. There's creativity in problem solving, you know. So I try and encourage my kids in that way in which I see them. For example, my son is very good at solving problems. He's very good. He's very good at, and he's very logical, you know. So that is a different type of creativity to my daughter, who just likes to paint things and make things and tell stories and read. That's what she likes to do. Yeah,
that's really good, because it's the way that we describe the show. So even though we say for the creators, I think people automatically assume, and it's probably what you assumed from the outset as well, why you thought you didn't fit in.
That's right. Yeah,
because a creator is anyone who's created something from scratch. So what did you study at college? Did you study
creativity or
anything to do with creativity, or like did you do like art and design? Or
no, I told you I'm from Nigerian background, so they're like, what's art? What is that? They're like, what is that? So my parents, unfortunately, did not encourage me in it. They didn't. They were like, no, you have to go and get a secure career, a traditional career. So they wanted me to do physics. Both my parents love physics. So
that's a shame, because I don't think you should really... I think sometimes parents live through their children. I don't think you should dictate what your child does.
But I think they're coming from a different generation, and education was, you know, a big thing for them, because that's how you got ahead. Now it's not so much traditional education, but, you know, information, and we have access to information because of the internet and whatnot. So things have changed now. So I understand why they did what they did, but it's just a shame that they didn't really encourage me to go down that creative route, because when I was in secondary school, when I left my two highest GCSEs were art and maths. So they were like, okay, forget the art thing. You got that out of your system. You're right.
Well done, good for you.
Well done, good for you, exactly. Now take double maths, which is what I did, physics and computing. And out of the 4 A-levels, I failed 3 of them. Yeah, I didn't pass. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's when I knew, that's when I went back to my parents. I said, look, it's not for me. It's not for me. I don't want to do I don't want to do anything academic. I certainly don't want to be a physicist. I don't want to be a physicist. I want to draw things and create things and tell stories through my visuals and whatnot, you know. So I think they kind of relented a little bit because they saw that how poorly I performed at college. It wasn't on purpose. So when I went to university, I did multimedia computing.
Oh, nice.
And computer science as well, which was completely obsolete as soon as I left. It was awesome.
Great.
It's like, great.
You know, that's something I always say, and I wonder if the education system is one of the things that hasn't really evolved with the times.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, you know, I have a young niece, and I don't think when she gets to the age of, you know, 18, she'll be going to university, because I feel like they'll be extinct by then.
Absolutely.
And the reason that I say that is because the structure doesn't work in the modern day. If you look at how they teach, when you go to university, you purchase a textbook. From the author writing the textbook to publication probably take a couple of years. Yeah. So by the time the textbook comes out, it's expired.
Absolutely.
So what you're learning is old knowledge.
Absolutely.
And also most teachers have been teaching for a long time. So if they don't upgrade their skills, what they're teaching you is also expired as well.
Exactly. I remember talking to one of my photographer friends, and she said something quite poignant. She said that she used to get in trouble when talking to her lecturers, because she would say to them, "Is this your way of doing this or the only way of doing this?" And I think I would really applaud her for that, because that shows creative thinking. Because it's like, no, okay, that's how you do it, but maybe I can find a different way to do it. And that's thinking creatively. But she always says that she used to get in trouble because she'd be challenging her lecturer, but obviously the lecturer has been not so much in the game for a long time, but in the institution for a long time. And unless you make a monumental and concerted effort to kind of keep your knowledge up to date, you already, like you said, they're teaching people of knowledge, you know. So I agree with you. I agree with you in terms of further education. Yeah, I think if they don't evolve, I'm not sure they'll be around when my kids get to like 18, 19.
Not to mention how much they're charging you for old information.
Yeah. And like I said, the barrier to information has been removed because of the internet. It's like you just need to know what to look for, where to go, isn't it? You know.
So, taking you back in time.
Do you remember that?
I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just referring to, you know, growing up in the UK as a young black woman. Did you ever find it difficult to embrace both sides of your culture?
Yeah, I did. Oh, that's a great question, though. That's a really poignant question. Yeah, I did. In
what way?
I think it's because I was and I am still into a lot of things that a lot of people don't consider black. For example, I'm 39 years old and I've been reading comic books since I was 15.
Wow.
Yeah, all of that whole X-Men, DC. I've been into it since I was a teenager.
It makes sense though, the animation.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Been into Disney. I did my thesis. My dissertation on Disney at university.
Okay.
You know, so I know the company quite well. Yeah, quite well. But those things at the time when I was growing up were not considered very black. It's fine now. In fact, there are whole platforms now like Geeks of Colour or Black Girl Nerds.
And Black Gamers.
And Black Girl Gamers. And they're like huge platforms for people like me who are into this stuff. But when I was growing up, no. Some of the comments I would get when I'll be like, I'll be explaining like the Phoenix Saga to one guy, and it was just like, how are you into this? You're black. How are you into this? I don't understand.
But it's so funny because you know what? It's in society sometimes people make you feel bad for being you.
Yes.
When actually it's ignorance.
Yes.
And because they don't know about it, it's like, okay, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, so therefore you're irrelevant and you're crazy.
That's right.
So you shouldn't even be discussing that in the first place. Because what makes something white or black?
Exactly. And since when is black a personality type? You know? Yeah. So I would be called that many times. It's like, oh, you're not very black, are you? Or you're not very Nigerian. It's like, what does that even mean?
I think sometimes we're selective with our culture.
Yeah.
So sometimes we want to be labelled as black and sometimes we don't. And for the most part, I think black people are often prejudiced to their own.
Yeah. It was a battle growing up. I mean, because I would, like I said, I'll be into like a lot of pop music. Obviously, I like the R&B and everything else, but sometimes looking back, I thought, okay, maybe I was into that simply because it was sociably acceptable to be into it, as opposed to what I really, really liked, So when I was growing up, there was a lot of parts of myself that I had to hide. I had to hide so that people would accept me. And I really wish I didn't do that, because then I would have developed more skills and been into more of what I wanted to be into at an earlier age than I did now. Yeah.
So how did you make that transition to finally accepting yourself for who you are, and what you like is what you like?
Yeah.
This is me. Take me as I am.
Absolutely. Kind of thing. To be completely honest, I'm not sure when things kind of changed. I think as society changed and things that I liked became a lot more mainstream. Games, like I said, the Marvel universe and everything, those became more mainstream. So instead of me looking like a nerd or a geek, I'm now an expert. Seriously, people on Facebook.
That's true. It's in your favour.
Exactly, completely in my favour. So I think, aside from that, I think it's more of. I'm a Christian. That I draw a lot of my strength from my faith. So I think that kind of helped me, like, okay, Nene, this is who you are. You are like this for a reason, and you can help people by being yourself, not trying to be who you think society wants you to be. And not only that, it's exhausting trying to, okay, if I'm with this group of people, I'm going to be like this. If I'm going to be with this group of people, I'm going to be like this. So it's like, no, accept myself and say, do you know what? This is me. Take me or leave me. Yeah.
We actually explored that topic on a recent episode with the Manhood Academy, because I think it's an issue that most black people have.
Right.
It's almost like having multiple personalities.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Because even down to our dialects,
yeah,
and the way that we speak around different people, the way how we behave.
Yeah.
So when you're with family, you may behave slightly different to when you're with the people that you work with.
Yeah.
So it's a constant battle. You're constantly acting out this role, so sometimes you get lost in that.
Absolutely. And it's exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. Now it's just like, no, it's just almost don't care. It's like, so what did you do yesterday night? Oh, I went, yesterday. So if it's Monday, someone asked me, what did you do yesterday? So I went to church, and then afterwards I took my kids to the park. Anything, you get the whole me. Does that make sense? There's nothing to kind of hide. Is
your husband Caucasian or black?
No, he's Gujarati, so he's Indian.
Oh, Indian.
He's Indian. Yeah.
So do you think that somehow helped you to accept yourself once you found a partner who was he's not black? So
yeah.
So do you feel like finally when you got married, you're just like, do you know what? I'm just not a typical black girl, and I make my own choices, and this is the person I've chosen to be with.
Yeah.
This is the new life that I'm creating, and now I can move forward as me.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that, if I'm honest. I hadn't thought of it like that. Maybe you're right. Yeah, because he's completely accepting, and not only that, the stuff that I like, he finds really interesting. Like we're both gamers as well, and and he comes back from the office and is like, he have chat with his guy friends and everything else, and he'll be saying, over the weekend I was just playing like God of War with my wife, and they're like, you're so lucky. You're so lucky. My wife hates that. She's always moaning when I'm playing games.
You're actually the perfect wife. Because I would be that wife that'll be nagging like, seriously, dude.
Seriously.
Games again.
You'll
be like, so what are we playing this time?
Absolutely. Or we'll do like co-op games where we play together. It's great fun. It's so much fun, honestly. Yeah, so much fun.
So, moving on slightly, how did you get into advertising and digital design?
Well, if I'm honest, with advertising, I kind of fell into it, When I left university, like I said, my degree was completely obsolete as I left. .com bust, if you remember that far back, 2000. .com bust, so I was in retail for 4 years. I spent 4 years in retail, selling perfume at a very well-known pharmaceutical company who I won't name.
You could kind of guess.
Exactly. And I must say, I actually really did enjoy it. I really, really did enjoy it. And I look back now on my time in retail, and I can see how it really helped me when I got into advertising, because advertising it's tough. And and I think it also helped me as well with not so much managing people, but how to respond to people and how to talk to them and everything else. Because, when you work in retail, you deal directly with the general public, and some of them are crazy. I did see some kind of like next level creativity there, though. Yeah, I always tell the story about how when I was working there, we'd have people pick up receipts from the station floor, go and find a product on the shelf, and then take the product and receipt and come over to us and go, "Hi, can I get a refund on this?" And you're just like, if you didn't catch them on camera, you just, because they've got receipt, you just, that's how they were making their money.
But how you wouldn't? You just assume that someone's got a receipt. They purchased it,
right? But no.
And I guess then people probably use cash a lot more than they do now.
That's right.
So like now you'd have to show, the credit card last 4 digits and things like that.
That's
so
right.
they can get away with so much more.
That's right. But I used to look at the stuff they used to do, and I was like, that's actually really creative. Why don't you kind of channel that into somewhere else? So I was in retail for 4 years, and then I actually did enjoy it. And then I spoke to one lady, and she's like, "Okay, Nene, is this what you want to do for the rest of your career?" And I said, to be completely honest, no. And she's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to go into what was now emerging as digital design. It's nowhere near as complex as it is now or widespread, but it was just coming up. So it was a lot of hybrid roles were around at the moment. So it was like coding and design. Okay. So I had to learn how to do both. So I did both. I put my own portfolio together. So this lady said to me that, "Okay, I think you should go and have a go.
Is she a mentor or?
No. She's just one of the other sales assistants on the shop floor. Yeah. But a great conversation with her. And she was just like, this is always going to be here. If you fail at, going into what you want to go in, this will be here. You can come back, So she said, give it a go. So I did. So I put my own website together, my own portfolio together, a lot of self-initiated ideas, because obviously I didn't have any real world experience. And that whole internship thing that's going around now, we didn't have any of that. We really didn't, honestly.
Oh, wow. So how did you put yourself out there in that time then?
Apply like crazy, and this is and it's not even like online job boards. It was literally like newspaper, newspaper, circle it in red, find a number, call, send a CV. It was all of that stuff. So I lost hundreds of applications, and then I was told many times that obviously I didn't have enough experience. I was like, but I need to get experience. So I ended up applying for a job at Lloyd's TSB at the time, which is now TSB, so the bank. And I was given a shot by a really nice guy. Can I mention his name? His name is Mike Answer. And he interviewed me, and he was like, "I'm going to take you on as junior designer." Nice. And it was great. And I'm always grateful for that opportunity. But as soon as I got into the industry, I realized I knew nothing about it. Like zero. I mean, he sat me down one time and he was like, "Oh, Nene, this is this person, this is the marketer, this is the copywriter." And I was like, "What does that mean? What does copywriter mean?" I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. So I had to spend a year really kind of like educating myself on what the roles were and whatnot, So yeah, that's how I got into it. Yeah.
Well, I think with most jobs anyway, and that is why the university argument is a little bit defunct, because any organisation I've ever been into, I think my degree was just to get me through the door. Yeah. Once you got in there, you always had to go through training and learning the ways of that organisation. That's right. You may not have known necessarily about the roles, but I figured anywhere that you went to after that, you probably had to go through a similar process. Now you knew a little bit more, but you had to understand the ways that the organisation worked. What's their brand identity? What's their ethos? Like how did they, what's their vision, mission, and how did they progress themselves and move forward? So
that's a good point, actually. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Don't be hard on your young self.
No, true. No, it's true. It's true. It's just that I don't ever like to be in a position where I'm on the back foot. I don't like that. I like to know as much as I can before I go into a situation, and then if I learn on the situation, that's fine, because at least I have basic knowledge. With this, I didn't have anything.
Well, you were starting out.
True.
So after Lloyd's, where did you?
I went to Digitas LBI, because I had worked on Lloyd's, the account, for about 2 years. I was made redundant at that particular job. And so I went freelance for about 6 months, which is great. It was great. And then because I didn't want to carve out a freelance career at that time, I applied to work at an agency called Digitas, and they took me on. They were Modern Media at the time, and they took me on because of my experience with Lloyd. So they put me on the Lloyd's account, and once you get into one agency, that's it. It's a lot easier to get into the other ones. So I stayed there for about 2 years. Best time, I must say, best time. A lot of the people who were there are still my friends now, and I left 12 years ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they're still friends. Best time, but I just didn't enjoy the role I was in. I wanted to actually work on non-corporate clients, not just corporate clients, because it's very stifling. Yeah, you know.
So where did you go after that?
That's when I started my freelance career.
That was going to be the next question, actually. So move nicely into that.
Yeah.
But what made you decide? Because it's one thing to not like the work that you're doing, but it's a whole other thing to essentially start a business.
Yeah. We just.
So how did you just decide to make that transition?
I think it wasn't intentional, as in like I'm now going to go freelance. I was like, okay, I'm going to leave Digitas, and I'm going to do what I did before I came to Digitas, which is just get some freelance roles in order to keep me ticking over, and then I'll look for something permanent. But it just turned out, because of my experience, by this time I'd had like 4 years experience and a pretty decent portfolio, I was able to book work consistently. So it was kind of like, okay, I started my freelance career and didn't really look back. Didn't really look back, you know. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I mean, I still do bits and pieces now because it's good for cash flow. But I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I went to so many different agencies. I worked on so many different brands, which is where my list of brands came from. I met so many different people, and I just felt that it was very challenging as well, because sometimes I'll go into an agency and they'll be like, okay, here, can you do this? And I look at it and I'll be like, actually, no. Yes, I can do that. Just kidding. Yes,
that's always been my thing. Say yes and then figure it out later.
And figure it out, yeah. And I had to do that. So by the end of the day, I would have figured out how to do some bits and pieces. And they'll be like, oh, great. Do you want to come in tomorrow and you know, next week and next year and whatnot? You know. So yeah, it was great.
So when did you decide to give it a name?
I think about 5 years into my freelancing career. We were getting a lot of people coming to us who were non-agency. So a lot of, well, at the time we didn't call them entrepreneurs, we called them like business owners. And they were coming to us, when I say us, I mean me and my husband, because we work together.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And they were coming to us and they're like, look, we're trying to set up this particular business. We've seen your work for X, Y, and Z, because it would be like billboards and stuff. And so they'd be like, would you be able to work with us? And I'd be like, yeah, obviously, I'm assuming you don't have that particular budget, but we can still work together. So we had already set up Vine Creatives as a business entity because we had to bill for the freelance work. But as crafting it as a business, I think it's about 5 years into my kind of freelance career, and took it from there.
So where does the name Vine come from? What's the meaning behind
it?
Yeah,
it's actually the first 2 letters of Viren's name. That's my husband, and then the first two. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So it still works as a word.
That's right.
It has additional meaning to it.
That's right.
So yeah. So you mentioned that you were doing like billboards and stuff like that. What would you say your main products and services for Vine Creatives is?
That's it's an interesting question, because as the technological landscape evolves and even the entrepreneurial landscape evolves, we have to keep evolving with it. So when we first started out, it was websites. It was just purely websites, because coming from an agency background, a website wouldn't just be a long scrolling page as it is now. It would literally be like a little experience. There'll be video, there'll be flash in it, there'll be animation, and all this really cool stuff. But that's changed now. It changed as soon as the whole flat design came in, and mobile as well. That all changed. So we focused more on branding, as in branding a company, but branding so that they could raise money, basically. Yeah, because in the community, that was one of the biggest issues. It's like, where do we go to get funding for our particular venture? That's across the board, you know. But even more so with the African diaspora and African focused businesses. So we would help them brand them in such a way that they were presentable enough to go and raise investment, because there's nothing worse than going to ask someone for like 200k and it's like nothing's done properly, social media's not there, the website, the logo looks like it was, you know, done by a child, you know. It's very difficult.
So does that mean that you only work with African clients or individuals of like African descent, or are you open?
No. We're open, but our niche is that, because obviously being African, I understand the culture, I understand the nuances of it, I can understand the challenges of it as well, especially for people who are trying to set up businesses on the continent. We have a lot of people on the continent who can help with that.
So you work in Africa as well, or your clients are based there?
Some of our clients are based there, some are based here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the first company that you pitched to after launching Vice?
Silence, because I don't remember.
Or maybe not even launching Vice, because you would have been pitching for jobs anyway as a freelancer, right? So what was the first, can you remember your first pitch?
My first pitch? Yes, I can actually. Okay, I'll do it from a freelance screen. The first pitch I did, it was for, I think it was P&G. I think it was P&G. It was
It's Procter and Gamble.
that's the one,
yes.
yeah. And the team that they had on the it was for feminine hygiene, and the team was all males. It was all male. It was mental. So they asked me to put together some animations that would speak a little bit more to women, obviously, and not in a patronising way, because we're talking about feminine hygiene. Yeah, so I put together a small animation. Just presented to them at the end of the day. I think that was the first one I did after I left. Yeah.
Was it successful?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was good. It's good. And then helped them design part of their website as well, because it was supposed to be for very young, not very young, but kind of like 14 to 25-year-old young women. Yeah, so it had to look a little bit different from the rest of their corporate sites. So yeah, that was good. That was good. Yeah, it was cool.
So what have you found the most challenging thing about working with large brands?
The process.
This is so bureaucratic.
Like you wouldn't believe. Sorry. Sorry. The process.
Just elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I just think it's when you work with even small startups or scale-ups, you're looking at most 5 people, and you always get to the CEO or the person or the founder, so the sign-off comes from them. When you work with a large brand, especially a global brand, sometimes the person signing it off is in Shanghai, and then you've got and then or the other person's in Australia, or the marketing manager is here in London, and everyone seems to have different ideas of
I was
what's
about to say, because
something
different
means.
tastes as well, and if everyone's not in the same room, then you think you're finished, and it's like so and so says, "Oh well, actually."
That's happened. We worked with another major bank. We did 2 years worth of work. 2 years. Then the CEO came and was like, "I don't like it." They scrapped the project. They completely scrapped the project.
So what happens in a situation like that? Do you get paid?
Yeah, you still get paid. Yes, of course.
Okay, cool.
It's all right then, isn't it?
Yeah, well.
But it's 2 years of work.
Yeah, because I guess sometimes you then become invested in what you're doing.
Of course.
You know, it's almost like your baby. You've done all this work.
Yeah.
And then,
it was mad. He's like, "Oh, I don't like this. Can we change it, but can we just scrap the whole project?" We're like, okay.
what does that do for your confidence in the work that you do?
I think if it had been earlier on in my career, it would have really knocked my confidence, and I would have been like, "Oh, maybe we're not really good enough." But after doing it for so long and working with so many of the big clients and realizing that their process is kind of shot a little bit, you then realize, you look at the client and you go, "Okay, do you know what? It's not us. It's you. Sorry." Yeah.
But then looking at it from a different perspective, if you've been working on something for 2 years, by the end of the 2 years, the original idea may no longer be effective as well.
That's true.
Because in this fast-paced world that we live in, if you was to start something 2 years ago and then try to release it now, Instagram and the socials weren't even as popular as they are now.
Exactly.
So your approach would have been completely different.
Exactly. But even when we do work with them, we do kind of try and alert them to that. It's like, okay, you guys are doing this. You want to release it at this time. Are you sure about that? Is it maybe there's other things that you can look at and whatnot?
So you do an element of horizon scanning.
Yes, you have to. Yeah, you have to. It's just like even nowadays with crowdfunding and everything else, everyone knows about Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but there's so many more of them out there, and they're all kind of super niche, and they're doing really well, like Twitch or Patreon or whatnot, So sometimes even big clients are not aware of some of these emerging platforms. They're not aware of them because they just look at the big ones that are making millions, but they're not aware that, okay, there's this small one out creeping up, and it's only until it becomes mainstream they're like, okay, cool, let's jump on it, But no, it doesn't always work like that.
So have you faced any issues, when you're pitching for clients, one, because of the fact that you're a woman, which is obvious, and then also because of your colour? Have you ever had any issues with that?
I'm going to say yes and no. And the reason why I say yes or no, I'm going to say yes because looking back at some of the pictures I've done, it was clear that they weren't really happy with me. Because of the way, how do I put this? That whole stereotype of an assertive woman always comes across looking a little bit aggressive.
Angry black woman.
Yeah, angry black woman. So there's a lot of times when I would be pitching and I'd just be getting, and I'm like, why? What's wrong? And I'd have to listen to their feedback later on, and they'll be like, okay, we thought you were a bit blunt, or we thought that you were a bit like over the top, or whatnot. But I think that's more down to colour than, say, me being female. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And then I would say no, because there were times when I would be pitching, and if there was an issue, I wasn't alerted to it. Basically, I just didn't know. I didn't
just
realize
oblivious to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're pitching to a client, what would you say to our audience? You know, who's up and coming, designers, etc.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important thing to remember?
When you're in the room, always remember that you have value and that you are there because they've asked you to be there. And that's where you can derive your confidence from. Because I've spoken to many entrepreneurs, and some of them have been really, really good, but when they do their presentation, they kind of collapse on themselves, and they're just like, I can't do this. And they're like, oh, I don't, understand what I'm doing here. So you put them in front of like a board of directors and everything else, they completely cave. But I'm like, you have to remember that you are there. They need you, basically. You have to really remember that. They need you. They need your knowledge. They need your expertise. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a seat at the table to begin with,
Yeah.
So you have to, that's the kind of like biggest thing for me. If I do go and meet a board of directors, which I have done for like finance company who's asked me to help them with the branding. And instead of being intimidated by all these people who are making like millions and whatnot, getting huge bonuses, I'm like, I wouldn't be here if you didn't need me.
Yes.
So that's my value, and that's the value I'm bringing. Therefore, I can be here and I can help you.
I think the other side of that is also knowing your worth in terms of your financial worth.
That's right.
So how do you know how to charge someone, especially when you're just starting out? Because that's one of the issues I found for myself.
Right.
Is actually knowing my worth. So initially, when I started out, it was all about you just want to have clients.
Yeah.
And then you don't actually fully understand the value of what you're doing. So in terms of knowing how to, price a project and things like that, what are the most important things you'd say?
Okay. First of all, don't bill by the hour. Don't do it on hourly. Yeah. Because it means that you can hit a ceiling very, very quickly. So you can only do a certain amount of hours in a day and a certain amount of hours in a week, isn't it? So if you bill by hour, once you've done those things, it's capped. It's capped. You can't go beyond that. So I'd say do it by project. And work out how much a project would cost, and obviously use your markups and everything else. Do a bit of research as well, find out what the market rate is for kind of like a large big player, and then look at how that would translate to working with smaller players, because obviously they can't afford the big ones, but they can do the smaller ones.
How would you find information about the cost of a project? Because I assume that for the bigger players, like Disney, how would you gain access to that kind of information when most of that is behind closed doors? Behind
the scenes. Yeah, I think you have to break up what your project is about. For example, if we take, say, a branding project, we'll split it up into modules. So you do branding. The first thing you do is the consultation, because you need to work out what exactly it is that they need, what their values are, what they want to communicate to their audience. Quite a few smaller entrepreneurs and companies won't even have that information to begin with.
Yes.
So that's the first thing that you do. So, but that is the largest value that they do, that you do, because it means that they can take that away and they can apply that to other parts of their business. So that's the biggest cost. That's what you charge the most for, because that's the biggest value. Then you have, once you've done that, and they say to you, okay, we want a logo and a brochure, or a logo and a website, or logo and whatever. Then you can then class, okay, let me go and look around. How much would I charge? How much would you pay for a good logo? Is it 60p or is it, £500? And then you look at the company and how much they're turning over and everything else to see whether they can actually afford it. And then you say, okay, we're going to do, say, 2 concerts. We're going to charge you this amount of money because we know that we're going to do it properly, and we're not going to scrape something off the internet and give it to you. So again, that's more value. Yeah, and then if you're doing a brochure as well, it's the same. Okay, it's going to take us this amount of time to do this brochure. This is the value it's going to bring, and then you charge accordingly once you've done your research.
So do you base it on the client's budget, or?
You have to, yeah. So, for example, if you have a client, for example, if your normal rates for, say, a web design project is 10 grand, and you say to the client, you ask the client, what's the budget? You should do upfront and say, look, what's your budget? If they go, their budget is 50p, then obviously they can't afford you. They can't afford you, and you have to say, okay, I'm gonna have to walk away from this. But if they then say that their budget is 8 grand, you can still take on that project, but you means you have to lessen how much you give. Otherwise you start running into minus numbers. So you then say to them, okay, your budget is 8 grand. This is what we can deliver for 8 grand. If you spend another 2 grand with us, this is what you get.
So you give them options.
Exactly. You give them options and you upsell, and say, yeah, you can have this for 8 grand, but find 2 grand and you get all this. And you see 9 times out of 10 clients will go for more because they're looking for value. And once you pitch the value, you find that the conversation about price becomes a little bit easier, a lot easier.
Cool. So have you learned any advice? So, you've given us some great advice here. Have you learned any of that the hard way?
Everything is learned the hard way. Everything is learned the hard way. I do not regurgitate what I have read and everything I've learned. And sometimes I wish that I'd learned it sooner, because it would save me a lot of heartache and paying off stuff that shouldn't be paying off. But yes, everything is hard learned. Hard learned.
Okay. So a lot of our audience are young entrepreneurs or creatives who, are just coming up the ranks. What would you say to them is the most important thing about establishing a personal brand?
Oh my God, that's easy. Be different. Yeah, that's the first and final. Just be different, honestly. Just like I was explaining to you before, the amount of influencers, the amount of clones, it will just blow your mind, honestly. It's just... And I can kind of understand why they do it. It's like, okay, this person is making this amount of money from doing that, but they did that when nobody else was doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But that's one of the things I always find. It's like, if you're just yourself, you're unique within your own right. So why do you feel like you have to put yourself within a particular box?
Exactly.
So one of the quotes that I heard from a recent guest is like, to define is to limit.
Absolutely.
So if you place yourself in a box because so-and-so is doing it and it's working really well for them over there, like you said, the market's already saturated. So what separates you from them? Exactly. What separates you? I mean, even when it comes to... Because I look for a lot of makeup artists on Instagram, and I've done events where I've spoken directly to makeup artists. And, sometimes I just ask them, just show me your Instagram feed. And they'll say they want to do special effects makeup, and then their whole Instagram feed is bridal. It's like... doesn't match.
Exactly. And it's like, the clue's in the name, you're a makeup artist.
Yeah.
So can we see some art? Can we actually see some art?
Ironically, our next spotlight guest is a makeup artist, and she specializes in doing like really cool designs on lips.
Exactly.
So for me, that was so interesting because again, everyone focuses on doing exactly the contour and the this and the that. But what made her really stand out for us is because she just focuses on the lip.
Absolutely.
It's like, it's actually works of art. I'll show you
Absolutely,
afterwards.
yeah.
And that just drew us to her. But I feel like, once you go in with that sets you apart from the competition. So people are more interested.
Absolutely. And ironically as well, that's what large brands are looking for. They're looking for people who are different, because large brands don't want to be clones of other large brands. They're all fighting to
be innovators.
Exactly. And they're all fighting to keep their individuality in this particular space, or their particular space. So there's no point presenting to a large brand 10 people who look the same. They're like, where's the point of difference? And like I told you, one of the things that drew me to the creators podcast and your Instagram account is how different it is. And when I go to it, it's like, okay, I've learned something today, or I've seen a new creative, or I've seen a new style of creative, and that's what people are looking for.
It's quite intentional, so I'm very happy
it's
that
great.
you observed that.
The content is fabulous, like I keep saying. It's really good. It's really good.
Our biggest fan.
When I find someone who's good, I kind of latch onto them. It's like, yay.
So, when did you decide to start We Are Stripes?
Oh, yeah, Stripes now has been going for about 3 years. And that wasn't actually completely started by me. It was one of my friends who approached me. We worked together back in Digitas, and he was just like, look, Nene, we've been in advertising for, over a decade. We're still not seeing people like us come through the doors. Should we do something about it? And I was like, yeah. So what we did is we spent 1.5 years doing research to find out why
No,
Why?
that was going to be my next
Yeah.
question. What
Yeah.
is the root cause of it?
There's two kind of like facets to it. One, the people who work in the agencies and whatnot don't really have any real connections with BAME community, basically. So they always struggle to find the talent. Because I'm very well connected to my community, I'm surrounded by talent. I know where it is. I know where to go to look for it. I know who the players are and everything else. But then on the flip side of it, for our community, it is still go into being a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. It's still difficult to tell the parents of people who are coming in, who are trying to get into the industries, that these are credible careers.
Yeah, it's also what I've realised just through observation is those careers are almost being replaced by technology. So when you look at lawyers now, a lot of lawyers are actually struggling. A lot of accountants are being replaced by accountancy software.
That's right.
So, and then even when you look far ahead into the future, doctors are just going to be in your living room.
Can you imagine?
So all of the professions that we were told that you need to go, you need to do this, it's actually the creative jobs that are going to be more prevalent in the future.
Because they come directly from the individual.
And it's something that that's what differentiates us from robots.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So with everything going towards automation, how do you automate creativity? Can you even actually really do that?
Exactly.
Because creativity is a combination of lots of different things, your experiences, what you believe in, how you were raised. It's all different.
But then it makes you question as well, because we're now in the digital world, obviously, and because of the way how things are set up, the youth that are coming through, are they going to be able to create based on the fact that most of them are plugged into these devices, and you need stimulation in order to create. So if you're not going outside and you're not viewing the world because you're just stuck in your room, does that encourage creativity?
No, of course not. Yeah.
So then that, even though creative roles are becoming more dominant, are we actually creating anything original?
Oh, that's a debate question, isn't it? Yeah, that's a debate question. I think you still can. Because for me, creativity depends on where you draw your inspiration from, and where you draw your sources from, and how vast those are. For example, you could sit in a room and you could read 5 different books, and all of those books on a different genre or different subject. And that is more than enough ammunition to kind of create something different. So it depends. Or you could go on, say, Pinterest, and instead of looking at what you usually look at, maybe say fashion or music, you can type in, I don't know, steampunk. Completely different to what you're using. But you'll be stimulated because you've purposely gone to look for something outside of your comfort zone. And that's how you can use the technology. Yes, you can get outside, and I really recommend travel. I've traveled a lot. And it's amazing out there what you can pull on when you travel, because you see things from different viewpoints. But you still can just as long as you know that technology is an enabler, and that you can use that enabler in order to help you to be more creative. I think that's key. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I really wanted to ask you, because you sound like you've had a lot of peaks in your career, but have you had any troughs as well? So, what would you say has been the highlight of your career to date, but also something... Was there ever a time where you felt like packing it all in? Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. I won't go and say, as many times, no. But there was one time when I had, it was a very, very bad client, and he was really mean. And this was not a brand client, this was an individual client. So this guy was an entrepreneur. I did inverted commas. And he was really mean, and it's clear that he didn't respect me, and that he didn't respect what we were doing. He kept trying to shoehorn me into doing things a particular way and whatnot. Very disrespectful. And that time I was like, do you know what, I don't need this. I can go back to working for an agency. I can go back to permanent work. I get paid a lot more money. Yeah, you'll have clients like that, but at least I get paid for it. This one, it's like, I'm taking in less money because I'm kind of like doing him a favor and whatnot. So when I spoke to one of my friends, and she was just like, but Nene, you can learn the best lessons from your worst clients. Yeah, and that was actually really good advice. Point. Yeah. So I actually looked at the way we were structuring talking to clients at that point, And then I realized where the gaps were and why he felt that he could, treat us like that and speak to me the way that he did and everything else. And it helped us kind of rearrange that particular process and helped us pivot as well, because that was that time where I realized, we can't do websites anymore. We have to move into branding. We have to move into what people are asking us for. We have to look at other business models and whatnot. So, to be fair, it did help, but it wasn't a nice experience.
Setback is a setup for a comeback.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Absolutely.
So, what do you use to help you to get over obstacles when they're placed in your way now?
Yes, because when they're placed in my way, I look at them now as challenges. So it's like, okay, what is on the other side of that challenge, basically, and what can I learn? What can I learn from this? So I'm just trying to think of one recently. I'm trying to think for a recent example. I think maybe it was a funding issue. So it's like we had someone come to us and it's like, Nene, can you help us with this particular funding? We tried our usual routes. Didn't work. We're like, but this has been working for years. Why is this not working? Why is this not working? So it then forces us to kind of look for new ways to do things. It forces us to be creative in how to solve a particular problem. Yeah. So instead of seeing problems as problems, you see them as, lessons. Okay, exactly, lessons. That's exactly it. Yeah. And then how and what is on the other side of that lesson. And usually sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes it's like, I didn't know about this.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think, what it is? I think if we had our way, we'd want things to all be plain sailing, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes God has to step in and give us these challenges. And one of the best quotes I've ever heard is like, when you're going through stuff, you're like, God, have you been listening to my prayers? Like, seriously, do you really think that we need this right now? We just lost a client. Like, why are we going through this now?
Yeah.
But the quote said, have you ever realized that your teacher's always quiet during the test?
That's right.
And I love that because then that just totally explains why sometimes God just allows you to go through the problem, because when you go through it, you go through that test, your testimony's on the other side.
Exactly.
And even if you don't necessarily gain from it straight away, your story will help someone else.
Absolutely.
So it's like, it's not nice when you're going through it.
Deeply unpleasant.
Definitely.
Deeply unpleasant.
Sometimes I'm just like, can't you just send us a memo?
Yeah.
Like everything else has evolved. How comes our messaging with God hasn't?
Yeah.
A text message, maybe.
Tweet.
Tap me on the shoulder.
Exactly.
Just say
DM.
Slide into my DM.
Exactly. But I think because he knows that we can do it. And sometimes we look at a challenge and think, God, I can't do this. And he's like, well, yes, you can. Otherwise it wouldn't. Because he doesn't give us more than we can handle, can he? Yeah. So I see challenges now as problems to solve. And every time you solve a problem, you learn something.
Definitely.
Yeah, massively.
The value is definitely in the lesson.
Absolutely.
So where do you see yourself and your brand in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years. It's short. That time is short. I think with Vine, I'd like us obviously to be bigger, but not too big. And as it sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but it's because that once you get too big, you
want to still be a boutique kind of agency.
Yeah, you can be a boutique agency and be turning over millions. I know quite a few of them, but so that's where I'd like to be. But I'd still like it to be kind of like small and intimate, with like a really strong team.
Focus on the customer. So I think sometimes when you get too big, you lose. It's what you were saying to us earlier. You lose the whole vision and reason why you started it in the first place. That's right.
And you just become a machine. And I've seen it happen many times where you started out with a wonderful startup and it's like amazing. You keep going. All of a sudden there's this massive beam off and it's just like, oh, how did we get here? Yes, we're turning over like hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever, but we've lost ourselves. Yeah. So I'd like to keep us like that. Still do bits though. Yeah.
And for We Are Stripes?
Yes, We Are Stripes is a different one, because if we don't solve the problems in 5 years, which is, if I'm honest, unlikely, because this is a long-term play, then you have to question, are we really having an impact? So I think in 5 years, Stripes has to have enough of an impact to keep going, but I would like it to have changed the industry so much that we're almost not needed, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So what is one valuable piece of advice that you've been given that you would never forget?
For business? Oh, okay. I sat down with one of my PR friends this is a couple of years ago. This is the best advice. This is the best advice she gave me. And she said, and I was complaining. I was like, oh, nobody knows about us, you know. This is about Vine, not even so much Stripes, but nobody knows about us. You know, should I put in a PR plan, a marketing plan, and everything else? And she said to me, Nene, what exactly do you have to market? And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, what have you done? What have you done? And I was like, well, I've done loads of things for this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, you just reeled off a list of what you've done for big brands. What have you done for the community? What have you done? And I was like, yeah. She said, when you do work for the community, when you actually, you know, put your all into it, actually solving the problem, you'd be amazed at people who come to you.
Gravitate to you.
Absolutely. So the mistake that I see with a lot of like smaller companies now is that they focus on the PR when they start. They haven't done anything. So you've got nothing to PR. So that's what she said to me. You've got nothing to PR. So start with the work. Start with the work. Do something. Put in a plan. Put everything that you need to put together. Do some campaigns. Do some work. Give real value to your community. And you almost won't have to do the PR because people will find you. People will come to you. It's exactly what happened.
Oh,
it
wow.
is exactly what happened. It's like the best advice I've had, business advice.
It's funny because I don't think most people would even view that as business advice, because the typical business would think, I need to do more things for the business.
That's right. That's
not
right.
for the community.
That's right. That's right. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's not. You're demonstrating it here. You're completely demonstrating it here. Sat down, put together a plan. It's like, how do we give value? How do we uplift people? How do we help? And then all of a sudden, you do it for a while and it looks like nothing's happening. Then all of a sudden, you run into one person, loves you so much. It's like, okay, here, have this, be connected to this. All of a sudden, you go kaboom. And then when that happens, people then start coming to you and it looks like your overnight success. But it's like, no.
It's because you put in the groundwork.
You put in the work. You don't do the PR first when there's nothing to PR. Best advice. Best advice, honestly.
That's amazing, actually. Yeah. So do you have a mentor?
I have several mentors. Yeah, I have mentors, a couple of coaches as well. One thing I learned very early on in my freelance career, and when we set up Vine, is that I'm really good at design, but I was rubbish at business. Because I had to learn how to be good at business, which is a very different skill for me. So instead of, I read a lot. I do read a lot, listen to podcasts as well. But I always try and surround myself with people who know better than I do. Yeah. So I have a few mentors. I'm not allowed to mention who they are. And a couple of coaches as well. And if I come up against a roadblock, like the challenges sometimes I go to them and I'm like, okay, what do you think I should do about this? Or somebody asks me to do something that is out of my remit. I go, yes, I can do it. Just a second. Let me go and find someone who can help me with it. Yeah. Nobody succeeds alone. Nobody.
No man is an island.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So if you were to speak to the younger you, the Nene at year 11,
gosh,
what advice would you give to her, knowing everything that you know now?
I'll tell her to buy shares in Facebook.
That's a good one.
This is going to be big. Buy it now. All your money, just go out and buy a couple of shares. Yeah, thank me later.
That's a very, very good response. I love it.
She needs practical help. She needs practical help. So.
Let's just get the money. We can figure out all the emotional side later.
Exactly. It's a whole lot easier when you have cash. But yes, I would tell her that all the points of difference that she has tried to hide to this point, don't hide them, because that is what is your uniqueness. In terms of the work that I do, all of my geeky nerdy stuff informs a lot of my work, and people see it now, they're like, that is really, really cool. And it's like, yeah, it's come from this particular film, it's come from this particular game or whatnot. So I would tell her that you need to, if you want to stand out, you have to embrace your whole self, and that includes the things that you like. And don't worry about if people don't understand it. They will one day, Yeah, I'll tell her about the whole MCU, and I'll be like, this whole Marvel thing that's going to come up, yeah, you need to start doing a blog 2 years into it, because Disney's going to buy them, and then you'll be an expert and you can write for Forbes. There are people writing for Forbes about the MCU. I feel like I missed the boat on that one, but never mind.
I love it. Yeah, so we're coming to the end of the interview now, but now that you've gone through the For the Creators questions, fabulous. And you know how we operate, who would you nominate to feature on the podcast?
Well, I think a question would be like, how many people can I nominate? How many can I nominate?
As many as possible.
There's quite a few. Right, okay, I'm going to go through my favourites. There was the fabulous Ola Christian from Lavelle TV. Hi, Ella. And then Sherry Collins, she's the lady who heads up Pitch Magazine, which is a magazine that is distributed to lots of, in fact, every creative agency in London. I think she's amazing, a natural entrepreneur. So I think, she's really, really cool. It's definitely her. Then my friend Asiko, who is an art photographer. His stuff is just lit. Honestly, it's just lit. Every time we post something, I'm like, oh, when did you do this? How did you do this? And why did you not include me? So there's him. Then there is Annika Allen. She heads up the Black Magic Network. Yeah, very cool. Then there's Prince from Framestore. Framestore is a very large visual effects company. Very, very big. They do lots and lots of major films. His journey is fantastic. His journey and his story is amazing, and what he does is actually pretty cool. And it's really cool to kind of expose this audience to this part of the creative industry.
Definitely.
I think it's quite hidden. And then lastly, I'd put in Anip and Naroop, and they're a duo. So they're an art director and photography duo, and they shoot for Shortlist, and they are just awesome.
Amazing.
I love those boys. Yeah, they're awesome. So that'll be my list.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you very much.
No worries.
If you can help us to get in contact with these people, it would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where can our audience follow you on socials, and also if you can just tell us your website and everywhere that we can learn more about Vine Creatives. So Vine Creatives, yeah. And We Are Stripes.
Yeah, no worries. So with Vine Creatives, we're only on Instagram and Twitter. Both is Vine Creatives. One word for Instagram, and then _, so Vine _creatives on Twitter. And then the website is www.vinecreatives.com. www.vinecreatives.com, but it's one word. Sorry, just making that clear. And then We Are Stripes. We are on again Twitter and Instagram. We Are Stripes, and then our website is wearestripes.org.uk. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, it's been an amazing conversation. I'm so happy. Not sappy. I'm so happy that you came through. Probably a little bit sappy as well, because I've been looking forward to this interview.
Yeah, I was excited.
So it's amazing to have you on. I hope you've enjoyed the For the Creators experience.
Thank you. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah. So as usual, guys, please remember to subscribe to For the Creators on all major podcast platforms. We recently joined the Spotify family. We're on Google Podcasts as well, so check us out. Also check us out on all of our socials. We're on Instagram at For the Creators Podcast, also on Facebook at For the Creators Podcast, but on Twitter we're _the Creators. It's been an absolute pleasure having Nene in, and I hope that you gain as much as I have from this conversation. And please tune in to our next episode, and see you soon. Bye.